print, email, Facebook, Twitter. More analysis. Operation Augury. Australia's war on terror goes dark in the Philippines. But why? Canberra had a problem, so it fixed it with secrecy. On a quest to find out why, we discovered a thing or two about some of the most diplomatically sensitive armed operations Australia has waged abroad during the war on terror. It is a tale of shifting tactics, prickly neighbours and the prevailing view within the defence and intelligence community that against Islamic State slickly publicised conquests over the internet, inflicting painful defeats in secret battles is considered a potently effective part of Australian strategy. It also raises questions for a free democracy. How entitled is the public to basic information about the cost and scale of military action conducted in foreign lands in this country's name? Right there in the budget. Sort of oddly, the crumbs of Canberra's problem and its fix were scattered in the pages of this year's budget papers. Hidden in plain sight under a listing of funding for overseas operations was a new entry: Operation Augury, Philippines. Above and below Augury were more than $3 billion worth of mostly foreign military operations: Okra in Iraq and the Middle East, High Road in Afghanistan and Manitow around the Arabian Gulf. Familiar names routinely accounted for in the budget every year, but intriguingly and uniquely for a budget, the costs of Operation Augury, Philippines were blacked out for each of the next 4 years with the letters NFP, not for publication, and a footnote explaining that this was due to national security issues. Sources familiar with Australia's almost 2 decades of battling terrorists overseas have described this secretive treatment of Augury as unusual, and all the more so because the broad outline of its original mission was once very publicly heralded. It raised an obvious question: why did a military operation in the Philippines suddenly go dark? The Philippines security nightmare. Ask Australia's military top brass or national security coordinators to name their deepest fears for regional security and the answer quickly draws in on the Philippines. That's what keeps me awake at night, one senior officer admitted last year. The dread of a racket in Southeast Asia explains why Australia moved so quickly last year to stiffen the Philippines Defence Forces with land, sea and air support once Islamic State's local offshoot laid siege to the city of Marawi. By October, Defence Minister Maurice Payne had publicly declared the rapid deployment of about 80 military trainers skilled at urban warfare in the Middle East to drill Filipino soldiers in the finer points of close-range combat against the heavily armed militia, known locally as MORT. In November, Malcolm Turnbull visited barracks in Manila to marvel at the training mission success. Australia and the Philippines are in the same fight, the Prime Minister declared after watching a demonstration clearance of buildings mocked up on a parade ground. By then, the task group, which also comprised RAF P3 Orion surveillance crews and a small number of highly experienced Navy personnel, had been given its name Operation Augury, Philippines. But as 2017 drew to a close, Australia had a rethink about the composition and profile of its mission there. Augury underwent a makeover that transformed it into something far more sensitive. The original rotation of soldiers from the Townsville-based 1 RA battalion headed home to be replaced by others from the same regiment. The first public hint of a change in tactics appears to have come after Christmas, when the local Townsville Bulletin newspaper sought a statement from Defence about what should have been an unremarkable troop turnover but was met with a curt response that it does not discuss ongoing operational matters including the deployment of personnel. Into the shadows now. Operation Augury was no longer a standard military training and surveillance exercise, it was receding into the shadows. The urban warfare soldiers were still there, but the defence media unit's coverage from 2017, complete with video handouts, abruptly stopped. The mission is not listed on the Defence Department's online stocktake of overseas operations. It never has been. In early 2018, Defence took a decision to complete Augury's slide into obscurity by extracting its costs from the budget. Then, in early stages of preparation, various explanations have been offered for the switch and also to define the problem Canberra's security community felt it needed to fix as the year began. 1. From figures knowledgeable about the decision, revolves around the obvious sensitivity within the Philippines to foreign troops being based in their country. Another is about controlling perceptions that Australia might be unduly interventionist in the neighbourhood. A third is far more tactically calibrated, that if Islamic State outfits do need to be defeated militarily in Australia's near region, then it is best their fighters know as little as possible about what has been marshalled against them. Their argument is that unlike all of the publicly costed military operations Australia has waged in the Middle East, always in coalition with other countries, to publish the costs of augury in the Philippines will give direct and unfiltered information to fighters about what is there. Send in the spies. There is also a similar but alternative explanation offered by a second group of defense sources who shared it on condition of anonymity. To them, the sudden secrecy surrounding the Philippines operation was due to the inclusion of other elements of the Australian government. Don't forget we have intelligence agencies. The overseas spy agency ASIS neither confirms nor denies its involvement, but as time has passed it is clear that the visit of its then Director General Nick Warner to the presidential palace in Manila in August 2017 was not for an idle chat and fist pump photo with Rodrigo Duterte. That visit has provided a small amount of cover for one senior government figure contacted by the ABC to acknowledge the existence of activities around Mindanao in the southern Philippines. Australia is not acting alone but in conjunction with the United States in what was explained as a cooperative regional effort by ASEAN countries alarmed by the speed and relative ease with which Islamic State was able to overrun Augury last year. With poorly patrolled maritime borders between the Philippines and North Sulawesi, the Australians are aware that trained jihadists, weapons and explosives are being transferred between the Philippines and Indonesia at levels considered dangerous. Media player, space to play, M to mute, left and right to seek, colon at different times in the last 8 months, Australian naval ships have patrolled the area, as has the US Navy. The use of family suicide bombers in Surabaya earlier this month has only elevated fears that knowledge and lethal armaments are reaching Indonesia, despite the best efforts of its counter-terrorism forces, in particular Densus 88. Augury's little-known roving commission The Grey Makeover of Operation Augury, Philippines is entirely in keeping with the traditions of a military moniker with an untold history in the Middle East. Were it not for its cryptic inclusion in this year's budget papers, Operation Augury's existence in other parts of the world might have continued to go unnoticed. Until now, defense has succeeded in smothering most traces of what appears to be a rolling and adaptive vehicle for performing unstated deeds spanning 3 countries. Although never listed among the registry of official operations maintained on the defense website, Augury, meaning the art of interpreting omens, has operated in Afghanistan, Jordan and the United Arab Emirates. In the few public acknowledgements of its existence, one was in a document that needed to be tabled in Parliament in 2014 and is mirrored in the obscure pay and conditions section of the sprawling defense website. It locks in overseas allowances for troops who supported it in deployments to the 3 countries. A defense source recalling Augury's past believed it had a counter-terrorism function in Afghanistan and the Middle East and was likely to have involved the SAS. The person suggested that the name had been carried over to the Philippines because someone must have envisaged the mission there would evolve beyond the original training role. What's in a name? But the same person, experienced in national security matters, was at a loss to explain why defense was now becoming secretive about the size and cost of its role in Australia's near region. If you put it in the budget, you should put dollars on it would buy. My opinion, because its existence is now public. Not that some degree of defense secrecy should come as a shock to Australians. There are legitimate security reasons why servicemen and women are sent to do deeds in foreign places the public will never know about. Some, typically spies and special forces, sign up in full knowledge their service will not be acknowledged. But in all its wars, this nation's resolve to defeat a threat has historically been measured by 2 vital metrics: the people and the dollars dedicated to the fight. At all phases of the war on terror, the Australian public could at least monitor with a degree of transparency the rising financial cost and the vast human scale of the military commitment across the globe. That is why the curious case of the appearing and vanishing Operation Augury is odd. It is a statement that Australia has entered a fight, the cost of which we are told we must not know, and may never know.